Greetings, Zimbabwe, Africa, and the world. Welcome to In Conversation with Trevor, where I go beyond the headlines and beyond the sensational. Today, I am in conversation with fresh in a box vendor-in-chief, Kuda Musasiwa. Kuda Musasiwa, welcome to In Conversation with Trevor. What a pleasure having you here.
I can't believe I am here. Thank you very much.
You are here.
Thank you very much.
Kuda, as you're known, you were born in Mbare,
Yes, sir.
1978.
Yes.
And you grew up in Australia. Tell me the experience of being born in Mbare, running around in Mbare, and finding yourself in Australia. How has that shaped who you are?
The one story that I can tell, which I think it encapsulates my life as a young Aussie kid who was born in Mbare, is that my parents had got a scholarship for my dad to do his doctorate in Australia, and so we were plucked out of Mbare and dropped in the middle of Sydney.
How old were you?
I was a baby. And that's when I went to primary school. And in those days, there was no black people within the Australian setting at the time. The Aborigines are scattered in two pockets in Alice Springs and somewhere else, and there was just no black or immigrants at the time. And Australia is a very candid, brash place. People use strong language there, and it was extremely racist at the time because they had no understanding. This is sort of, Michael Jackson still hasn't really hit the streets. Michael Jordan is not yet that popular on the screens and so forth. So a black child in Australia was an extremely difficult thing. I remember at primary school, actual parents of children, picketing the school so that I wouldn't be allowed in the pool with their children. And sadly, the teachers agreed to this. So
what did that do to you?
It crushed me. It crushed me to see teachers allow that to happen. The headmistress even allowed it. I was given 5 minutes whilst the other kids were changing to swim after every lesson. It's a hot country.
Did that make you a racist, or it made you tolerant?
Look, it made me a person who started to lead a band of misfits. It made me now the person who hung out with the kid who was a dwarf, the kid who was, with the red hair, who everyone called a ginger. And it made me somewhat of an outcast. And hence, I believe that sometimes my, call it anti-authority personality sometimes comes from those spheres where I'm a non-conformist. Because I guess I was never accepted as them in the 80s. It was really hard. I mean, the Prime Minister at the time, Bob Hawke, they asked me, my sister, and my brother to act as Aborigines in the bicentennial story in 1988. And at the end, in the Sydney Opera House, when we finished, the Prime Minister walked up to his wife and he looked at me and my brother, goes, "There's my little gollywogs," and he rubbed our hair. You see, that's the time that it was at the time, right? So by the time we came back to Zimbabwe, I think it made me, in a weird way, follow a lot of my dad's leanings of being a nationalist, right? And this sort of proliferated all the way through to my university years.
There's a couple of things there. Candid and brash.
Yeah.
That's how you appear to the world.
Yeah.
So that's where this comes from?
Absolutely. You see, people say I'm loose with language. I use a lot of French. But in the society I grew up in, certain words would not be considered as bad as they are now. So my swearing, I 100% accredit that to my Australian upbringing, right? It's a very, people there speak a lot more freely. I think I also got my sense of humor from them, the give as good as you get, self-deprecating, don't be afraid, kutrinyarana type thing. That's the kind of environment that I grew up in.
So there's the negative you got from growing up in Australia, and any positives?
Yeah,
you mentioned the humor.
I got the humor. I think my love with agriculture, I think, came from there as well. Even though I was in Sydney, a lot of the times were the sheep farms and stuff. So I saw a people who had been around for about 200 years in this new land that they'd sort of occupied, who had built this heaven out of a place that is really hellish if you think about it. I mean, the temperatures, the heat, you name it, but it's a really beautiful country. And it's, in fact, if I was not in Zimbabwe and I was to raise my children anywhere else, I would say Australia is my next pick. I just believe that people are more similar to us. Sometimes with just different skin color.
Your dad is a man of faith.
Yes, sir.
You are not. Explain that to me. What happened?
You know, I believe there's been a journey that I've been traveling in my faith. Being a son of a pastor, you are brought up within the space of Christianity. You're baptized at a young age. I was the youth chairman and so forth, right? And as you go to university, you start to explore, you start to wonder. And I think that's when I sort of became a lot more agnostic about my approach. However, I do feel that as I've got older, I'm 40 now, going to 41, I do feel I'm rekindling a lot of my faith and a lot of my belief in something greater than ourselves. I think I'm living testimony as a man who's lost everything twice, that there must be someone out there who wants better for us other than ourselves.
Lost everything twice. You failed twice?
Well, I failed a lot of times, but I think as far as losing everything twice,
Talk to me about losing everything twice.
Look, after 15 years of working in the UK, we started two great startups. We had one called Blast.co.zw and so .uk, and we also had one called A-Star Tools. And I made quite a bit of money as a young man, sort of in the UK at the end of my stay there. And around 2008, I came back. We shipped everything that we had in these 40-foot containers, including my beautiful Range Rover, my Freelander. And we used a Zimbabwean company, a black company. And till today, none of that stuff ever came. They didn't pay the bill of lading and all. So my landing in Zimbabwe was probably my triumphant return home after so many years out there in the UK. I came back and I had to start from scratch. And that was a deep lesson in the sense that things are things, right? Those things were acquired by hard work. So it's almost like if you work hard again, you can reacquire the things. The second time I lost everything is after building all this up, I went through a terrible divorce. Terrible divorce. I married my childhood sweetheart. We dated since we were 14. She left. I had 3 children. And had properties and all these. And so the second loss, I would say, is losing your family, losing your home, losing everything around you that you hold of value, again, things, and starting again, And
what has that done to Kuda?
It liberated me, because a person with absolutely nothing to lose anymore has nothing to lose. So it's almost you're able to be far more adventurous. You're able to be far more provocative. I think it was during this terrible divorce period that I became far more politically aware and political conscious and less afraid to speak. It's the time that I started an absolutely new business from zero experience. And these are things that I feel, because you lost everything, the barrier to taking a risk when you have nothing to lose is much easier.
Nothing to lose, Kuda, but what's the most precious thing to you right now?
My family, and I think I have, I've got remarried, I have a baby, I've got my children still, and I think that it's understanding that at my age now, the clock is ticking downwards now, and they absolutely depend on me to make the right decisions, to make sure I keep sending them to school, to make sure that they're fed, to make sure that they're looked after, they're protected, right? So the most important to me is family.
So essentially, from the lessons, we can be detached to things, but we can't let go of our family. That's what I'm getting from you.
Absolutely. And I think things for me, and this is why I proudly drive my old Honda Fit, as bashed up as it is, has proved to me that, the days of my Jaguar XF are long gone, right? Those things that used to give me value as a person can disappear. But then as a person, you still have to remain. You're still a dad, you're still a son, you're still a brother. And so these are important lessons that I've learned through these periods in Zimbabwe, that, your family, the people around you, the people you keep around you, the energy that you keep around you is what's going to keep you moving forward. It's not the worldly things that sometimes we hold too dear. In fact, if I think about it, I spent 15 years in the UK acquiring things.
Which you lost.
Which I lost. And then in that time, my parents got older, my friends, it's almost like I wish I just come back sooner with nothing and try to get, and been here and spent that time with.
But they say life begins at 40, Kuda. You've just started.
Yes.
And you've got a beautiful wife, you've got a beautiful kids, you showcase all of them all the time, and you love spending time with them. Tell me how much your family means to you, Kuda.
Oh, they mean everything, and I think everything I do is for them. I take big lessons from my dad and my mom, who I'm very grateful are still alive, and very grateful for the structure they brought into my life and the amount of time they invested in us, including going to church on Sundays as a family, eating together as a family. And these are times when we had nothing. As students in Australia, mom is working as a care worker, we're doing paper rounds, It's not like there's a lot of wealth, but there's a lot of wealth in love and a lot of wealth in laughter and a lot of wealth in spending time together. So we didn't grow up rich at all, but I think my parents always gave us a lot of richness with the love in the family. Dad, pray together, stay together, eat together, stay, it was always that. And I think this is the things that I've also carried through, spend a lot of time with my son, my daughters, make sure that they participate in the business, make sure they start their own businesses, force them to do things they feel they can't do even at a young age. And I think this is the lessons I also take from my dad.
Fascinating. And begotten son? How did you become begotten son?
My dad, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave me his only begotten sons. And I think that's something he used to say all the time. When Twitter opened in 2007, I typed in begotten son and it was available. So then it stuck.
Right.
That's how that name.
But it's part of your walking back to your faith, as you said.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Are you an entrepreneur, a techie, a political activist, a loudmouthed young man? What are you?
I think I'm probably the nomenclature or mixture of all things, multi-dimensional, deeply flawed as a human being, and I'll never run away from my flaws. I think, the political activism was purely out of frustration and anger. Like I said, I was going through a divorce. I felt that my life was going to ruin. I felt that the best years of my life had been taken and all these kind of things. And there was a deep external locus of control as far as who controls my destiny. It's these old men. And you put a lot of energy into fighting these old men. And I think as I became an old man at 40, I realized, well, you know what? An internal locus of control now has to take over. You can't be the blame culture person anymore. You need to somewhat take the reins. In any situation, even in a refugee camp, people still get married. There's still hope. There's still optimism. People run businesses in Syria. Why is that? I think what kind of person do you want to be? And I think my 40th birthday epiphany, I think, was what kind of person do I want to be? Do I want to be a guy who cries a lot and is angry a lot? Or a person who loves a lot and who's happy a lot and smiles a lot and tries to, do better for his family?
You sound like you are slowly walking towards your purpose. What could that be?
My purpose? I think is to generally do the best I can in the very limited time that I have, realizing that I'm not omnipotent, I'm not omnipresent, I'm not omniscient, right? I'm merely just another human being on the skull of the earth that will live for a very short period of time, and I'm not that important. And I think realizing that you're not that important sometimes makes you more important in the way, more purposeful in the way that you maneuver. We have a very small period of time on this God-given earth. There are trees that are around that are older than any of us, and we walk around them nonchalantly thinking that we are gods. We are not. We are nothing. And I think with the little that we've been given, we can try and make as big a difference as possible within our sphere of influence. And it may be 2 people, it may be 10 people, but do the best you can with what you have.
You already have made an impact. You're being very modest. Your involvement with this flag, your involvement with Fadzai Mahere's campaign.
Yep.
Talk to me about that as briefly as possible.
With this flag, I was sort of like the tech behind it and the marketing engine behind that. It was never supposed to be anything bigger than me and a couple of friends, me and Henry and Ivan, putting out some videos and trying to encapsulate some of the feelings and the emotions that we had as a generation. What it became was ridiculous. No one planned it. No one knew what was going to happen. there's a time when you guys reached out to us because you saw that it was now becoming out of control. Like, so all of a sudden, Ivan is charged with treason. There was no central organization. There was no funding. It was some guys on their smartphones. And I think that's the time we realized, wow, there's so much power in this new social media where people can interact and exchange ideas. And then the next lesson I learned from even that power with the social media, with the Fadzai campaign, is that you can win online, but in real life, sometimes you haven't done enough. Online we were the best campaign ever, right? Everyone hails us for being innovative and all sorts of things. But at the same time, when it came to the ballot box, there was a lot of work that should have been done to understand the entrenchment in different party structures, and there's a lot of work that needed to be done to understand that sometimes the way you are seeing the world is not the way that the other 20,000 people in the constituency see the world. And no matter how much you're winning polls online, that does not necessarily translate.
With that experience, with that hindsight, would you do it again?
No, I don't believe I'll ever get into political engagement in that way again. I feel like the scars and the bruises are still too fresh. We gave it our all. We gave it everything. However, I believe that there's many other really important ways that we can be politically active. I'll give you this as a straight fact. I've created more employment starting the company that I've started now than I did as a political activist. I have impacted the actual lives, the day-to-day living of more people who I don't even know. Some of them are strangers.
Shall we go straight into the elephant in the room?
Yeah.
Fresh in a box.
Yes.
How did that all start?
It started off by me and my brother Rufaro believing that we could get into tomato farming and we'd get rich. And then realizing that tomatoes are perishables and they don't have time for you to find a market. They need to be sold now. And the pricing was going crazy. Supermarkets will treat you in a very weird way where they know that your perishable goods are about to deteriorate, right? And the pricing that they were giving you in RTGS, the value of the RTGS was going down. So we had no choice. We had to actually reach out to our friends and family on social media and say, guys, we have tomatoes. Would you like to take them off our hands? And in doing so, reached this latent energy of a lot of other farmers. Pete Percy was doing lettuce in Norton. Dennis, a guy who works at Tel One, who had baby marrows that had become courgettes. It's huge thing. And they're like, hey, dude, if you're gonna sell your tomatoes, let me also bring you some lettuce. Let me also bring you this. So it was purely a serendipitous sort of mistake that Fresh in a Box started, because we had farmed so many tomatoes and they were now prolifically every day harvesting.
So we are here now, the company is there. What does it look like? What is it taking for you to fund it, to get it to where it is right now?
Look, we have no funding. No one has given us anything up to this point. I mean, our model is very simple. We sell the day before to our customers and we deliver the next day. We have bootstrapped everything that we're doing right now to make sure we leverage the best techs, So, Zimbabwe is actually one of the best online countries in the world, considering our usage of WhatsApp, considering our usage of digital monies, right? So we can sell our products quickly online to our people, to our friends and our families and our customers, and then we can move that produce to them the next day. And using a socialism of delivery methods is basically saying, look, if you all pay the same amortized amount for delivery, if I have 20 people in Chizipiti, it costs me less. And if I have 100 people in Mbare, it's even cost me less. If I have 5 people in Kuadzana, they cost me a bit more, but the people in Mbare have subsidized those. So we're able to logistically get to more people with some great logistics partners of other young entrepreneurs who have now come and said, look, I have 2 vehicles, I have 2 tuk-tuks. We're able to move produce very, very quickly. So if you see our structures right now, we're still very lean. Our team is still very young. It's
what numbers are we talking about?
We're talking about 15 young people right now. We're working. I'm the oldest in the team. My wife is the managing director. Brenda Zwarai is the GM. We've got a bunch of great guys who are helping us with the tech, like Bakani, working on great websites and how do we make it easier, the shopping online. If someone doesn't want to use online, can they use WhatsApp? And how do we capture those orders, put them in an optimized routing system? And this is all just using stuff that's pretty much open source and available to anybody.
So technology has been very key to your success.
Oh, absolutely. It's 100% of our success. It's being able to register the 1,900 or so farmers who now supply our boxes.
How many farmers?
1,900 young farmers,
Wow.
all in around Harare, some in Mbare, some in the Midlands. And using tech, being able to plot them into growing schedules so that we know what our supply is, has now given us the ability to do greater things. We can now supply hotels and catering companies. We're now able to do businesses and supply supermarkets, which we're doing now. So the scale has been great because we can be the biggest horticultural farm and actually own a very small plot of land in Glen Forest, which is awesome. So by having everybody register on one place and sort of centrally organize each other, we're able to produce a lot individually, but together as a collective, we're producing a huge amount and we can sell that.
You've bought the farm in Glen Forest, have you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so clearly you're making good monies to be able to make this big investment, sir.
It is a combination of things, and I think we need to be very clear. It's a combination of having, I guess, a really good support structure as far as family is concerned. It's a combination of having great relationships that have made us able to get the plot of land in Glen Forest, and also people who believed in us enough to be able to see that, you know, an unproductive piece of land can become productive if we give it some energy. So you'll be shocked at how easy it is for a young person who really has the energy is to get a plot of land in Zimbabwe right now. You'll be shocked.
Talk to me about that.
You see, if you don't try, you just will never know. Zimbabwe has got some of the most dense per capita, most fertile lands, right? And after land reform, a lot of these lands went to death. Okay, the farm we took over used to generate over $300,000 a month in selling roses and exporting green beans and all sorts of great stuff. And when these farms were taken over, it became a shell, nothing. Literally what you see right now is what was left 20 years ago. You know, busted out greenhouses, old packing sheds. And I mean, you can probably see the seat that the guy left when he was kicked out type of thing. And I think the problem with that is that...
But you've got title to this land now.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What's the future for Fresh in a Box? I mean, what would you want it to look like in the next 5 years?
With the fresh farm that we now have, we want to grow a bunch of what's in our box by ourselves, just to supplement our supply chain. We also want to use it as a demo plot for the best practice, using the best tech, using biochemicals and biofertilizers, try and get a really great standard of crop. And as far as Fresh in a Box is concerned, I would like us to continue to not be a vegetable company or a shopping service. We want to be the best experience for customers anyone has ever seen. And I think that's what I always tell my team. You don't sell veggies, you sell the best experience. You know, if someone has a bad experience, then they just don't come back with their money. We want to make sure that we always are on top of our game in providing absolute excellence in our service and our deliveries, in the quality of the produce. Because we strongly believe that in 5 years, every young Zimbabwean child, no matter where they live, should at least have half their plate as living food grown and nurtured in Zimbabwe. Because there's nothing as good as that.
Are there any lines that you've looked at that you'd want to produce yourself from your farm in Glen Forest?
We really are passionate about, the produce that other people are ignoring. We want to get stuff like turnips and parsnips, and there's a bunch of different types of veggies that used to be grown in Zim that have since sort of disappeared. We're all gravitating to cabbage and rape and so forth. So we'd like to reintroduce a bunch of, different types of veggies. And I believe, going back to that beautiful organic way that Zimbabweans used to farm to get a much better type of product for our customers. I think we get higher value for them when you sell them onto the markets, and also maybe getting onto the export market again. As a team, we would love to start exporting to different countries as well. You
haven't started exporting?
Not yet.
Any regional strategy, any international strategy?
Well, regionally speaking, as far as our website and our tech is concerned, from the beginning we designed for scale. So we already have things like M-Pesa, Mnet, Airtel embedded in our payment methods already. So the jump to say going to Kenya will be far easier for us right now. and we hope in the next couple of months, we have great conversations going on with people in Malawi, people in Rwanda. We had some guys in Gambia who came to see us, and we would love to be able to replicate that on a mass more scale, because I believe that, Africa is the breadbasket of the world. So why not? What we're doing is not necessarily unique. I think the way we have put systems together is unique, and I think that is franchisable, and I think that's where we're going to go with it.